Just Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Thank you so much for joining us here at the North Hall in Oxford. My name is Simon Sladen and I'm the chairperson of the UK Pantomime Association, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our second Panto Panel.
Yes, hello again. Welcome to episode 115 of this series, and this time we're in Oxford to hear from a UK Pantomime Association discussion panel.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
In the last episode, we spoke to the entertainment and pantomime legend Anita Harris. If you missed it, you can still check it out along with all of the other previous episodes. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the series so that you don't miss any future episodes. If you're new to the series, we talk to a variety of guests, from celebrities and backstage team members to practitioners and academics. We regularly discuss specific panto titles and stock characters, and we talk about how pantomime is produced, its history and its future. This time we're here at the North Wall Arts Centre in Oxford to join pantomime producers, directors, performers, theatre venue staff and educators for the second Pantomime Panel event. The subject this time is pantomime scriptwriting, so let's go inside and meet some of the organisers and some of those taking part. Well, chairing the scriptwriting panel is Alex Jackson, a founding trustee of the UK Pantomime Association.
Hello everybody, welcome to the North Wall Arts Centre. I'm going to start off just by introducing myself and asking the panel to do the same. So my name's Alex Jackson, I am a trustee at the UK Pantomime Association. I am a writer and director, primarily for amateur pantomimes, so I license pantomimes internationally and indeed across the UK. And I also write and direct professional productions as well, most recently at Exeter Northcote directed Dick Whittington.
Hi, I'm Vicky Stone, my pronouns are she, her. I would describe myself as I make theatre, television and music, that's what I say. I do work across a number of roles, so in terms of theatre making I do book music and lyrics, so I write scripts, I compose and I write lyrics, but that's also across other mediums like advertising and TV and that kind of stuff as well.
Hi, I'm Susan McKenna, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a writer, director and an actor working across theatre, television and film, but a big part of my career has been pantomime.
Hi, I'm John Bradfield. I am a writer. I write, the thing I mainly write is pantomimes. I've done plays, musicals and a bit of TV, but the thing I do every year is I write a pantomime that is very gay and very much adult.
Hello, I'm Toby Hoss. I use male pronouns. I'm a playwright and a theatre director. I specialise in work for family audiences. I've done a lot of work in adaptation, and I've written pantomimes and directed pantomimes for Oxford Playhouse and for the Theatre at Chipping Norton.
Well, let's start by talking to Sam Munday-Webb, who is also producing this event for the second year running. Sam, tell us where this idea came from, first of all.
So, as both a theatre maker and an educator, my ethos is always about kind of learning and making sure that we're continually learning from the experiences of others and the world around us. And the success of last year's event on inclusive practices for performance made us think, where do we go next? And there was a real kind of appetite for script writing. Mm-hmm. I've, on a personal level, want to be in a theatre and laugh as much as possible. And navigating those challenges in a world which is ever-changing, where there are sensitivities and there are expectations, I think is a really challenging thing for a writer. Mm. We also are aware that we want to make sure there is representation within our creatives, within the industry, and that's something that we're really passionate about. And we know by our own admission that there isn't enough. Mm. So we're hoping that bringing an event like the event today, we're able to upskill, inspire, educate, which essentially is the purpose of the charity, so we can start to see new, emerging and exciting writing happening.
Yeah, and there are so many things that you could have a panel event to discuss, because there are so many elements to discuss in Panto, full stop. What does the process mean from getting an idea to getting it through to this final event?
So I think it's really about being on the ground, talking to people and seeing what they feel is important, mm-hmm. seeing what they want to I think we always talk about Panto being so. It is progressive. It is one of the most progressive art forms in that it evolves year on year. Yeah. So we need to stay ahead of those challenges. So the fact that we're able to explore them and we want to explore them is really, really important to us.
What's the idea for next year?
Oh gosh, well, you tell me. If anyone has any ideas, please absolutely be in touch with the UK Pantomime Association, because we're here to serve and we want to educate people. We want to support new talent, new writing, and we also want to help people overcome challenges and the problems that they face when they are creating panto. And we want to make life easier and continue to innovate and support pantomime moving forward and evolving.
Yeah, and once this event is finished today, will there be an information pack on the website again? I know you've been filming. Is that going to be up there to download as well?
Yeah, so there will be the transcription of the event today, and there will be a video going up on a video platform in due course. So watch this space.
Yeah, and watch what you missed out on, and make sure you come along next year. Sam, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's hear now from John Bradfield. But first, host of the panel, Alex Jackson, because one of the things we're looking to do on the podcast over the next 6 to 12 months or so is take a look at amateur pantos, because Alex, I think it's fair to say that it's quite conceivable that more people each year will go and see amateur pantos than professional ones.
Well, I think amateur pantomime, I license a lot of scripts for amateur pantomimes in the UK and in fact internationally. And one of the things that always strikes me is that amateur pantomimes is probably our first experience as professionals of pantomime. And pretty much every practitioner I meet can tell me about the Amdram group they're a part of in one way, whether that's as an actor or indeed being given the opportunity as, I think, a 17 or 18-year-old as I was, to write and direct for them. So it's not only a child's first chance to see a pantomime, but often a professional practitioner's first chance as well.
Whenever we talk about panto scripts, we talk about relevance for a local audience, we talk about inclusivity and all that sort of stuff. But you write pantos for amateur companies who literally take them off the peg. So how relevant can they be?
They are off the peg to a certain extent, but actually one of the things that I really try and think about when I'm writing the scripts is how there might be a personalisation which could apply to lots of places. So lots of opportunities to add in local towns, local road names, local well-known figures or traditions. And also I do tend to do bespoke scripts as well for amateur pantomimes who want more of that kind of specificity within it. The other thing that amateur pantomimes often want is really large casts, much bigger than you can often get in a professional show nowadays. So you're also trying to think of really great opportunities for everybody who's in the group to have a go and have their moment.
And there's still an opportunity to add topicality as well, of course, isn't there? When you're writing an adult pantomime, obviously the basic premise of a pantomime story will still be there, but of course you can take it in whole different directions, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of amateur panto, I started writing them for the Christmas parties of a lesbian and gay running club that I am a co-writer and members for. So in terms of us doing it, absolutely sprang from that amateur tradition of speaking to your own community and from your community with that relevance. Yeah, we can go more convoluted or sophisticated depending on your choice of word in the stories. The romantic relationships, at least some of them, and probably the main one, will be same-sex. But yeah, I mean, we've still got a lot of the tropes. We still have the dame who will flirt with the man in the audience, whether that's a straight man or a gay man. Actually, that becomes funny for different reasons, Yeah. And we take the key moments of a story. We then decide where we're going to set it. We usually make up a fairly specific fictional world. So we had a little Yorkshire village called Upper Bottom this year. That's family level joke, but it means that you can start. Let's make it a sense of place, because we're producing in central London. That idea of localness doesn't quite work because we're such a big city. Like, you're not going to make a joke about that shop that's closed on Charing Cross Road. It's just not quite right. And so, I mean, like, our audience is London and home counties, and then within that, it's a lot of LGBT people. So actually, we quite like to go, no, let's just set it somewhere else, because that then stimulates jokes and ideas for character sets and so on, which if you're doing it every year, that's the other thing. You're doing this every year. So you've got to keep coming up with stuff.
But obviously every panto has a certain amount of innuendo and, comedy place names. You might have a village called Little Rubbing on the Saw, that sort of thing. But you can take it to another level with imagery as well. You talked about not having a pumpkin, for instance.
Yes, we had the fairy godmother's spell mishit the pumpkin and hit a courgette instead. So when the coach was revealed, it was a giant golden, courgette shape, which got a lot of laughs. Yeah, we can absolutely. I mean, our beanstalk last year was insanely phallic. Do you know what? I had really thought to have one of those amazing giant puppets that lumbers around and everyone goes, how? And then we went, no, let's just be stupid. So he was a massive cardboard cutout with a naked, for no reason, with a swinging willy that swung every time it moved, with the voice of, bless him, Ian McKellen doing the voice for it. So I was really nervous that it might be his last role. But no, we don't tend to do innuendo occasionally because it actually comes out, but we can go much filthier. Yeah. But I try and be witty. If the ruder the joke, the more intricate and elaborate with the wordplay you want to be. Because, there's 2 hours of it. You can't just be slamming rude stuff.
Well, adults can understand that the cleverness behind a joke as well as the funny bit in the joke, right? Which is pleasure.
the convoluted build-up that you've hopefully buried.
Yes.
Or perhaps it may just be something that feels very poignant until you realise the payoff is just crass or just like a bit brutal. Yeah, absolutely. You can, and you refine it and you refine it. I mean, I can write, 15 versions of a joke because I know there's the gag there, but it's a bit awkward.
Wordplay is something you haven't spoken about in the first half. It's really interesting, isn't it? And on different levels, certain words that aren't funny are hysterical to 5-year-olds. Bum, bogey. Dick and Dom made a whole career out of bogey. That was all their catchphrase. And wordplay is really important. You don't have to have gags everywhere. Wordplay can be funny.
Wordplay is also definitely my personal sense of humour, so that's definitely something that I try and include. But I also think that the best words, the best puns, the best jokes are the ones where you can say them to adults and you can say them to children and they will all laugh. Maybe not for the same reason, but they will all laugh. And I think that's the golden Venn diagram.
Well, listen, thank you both for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Always a pleasure to bump into Susie McKenna, trustee of the Panto Association as well, of course. But here today talking about one of the many strings to your bow, which is writing pantomime. And we've talked about how it's evolved and its evolution will continue. It's just a fascinating area, isn't it, to share ideas?
It is. I mean, it's so rarely that you get to talk like a nerd about writing panto. I mean, it's often so much the Cinderella part of the writer's sort of list, and some people are even like to still demean it or put it down and not realising actually how difficult it is to get it right. And you don't always get it right, but you try. And also how many layers you have to put into a script like that. And then you've got the pressures of the 21st century, the changes in young people, the changes in people's ideas. You've got to look culturally now about where those shows and where those stories are coming from. And that sort of started for me a little bit, just starting at Hackney when I started writing. As a small example, a young boy called Robert Levy was murdered outside my office at Hackney very early on, and I had to make that decision right there and then. I am not killing anything on that stage ever again, and I'd been a principal boy for years, killing all sorts of things, and so, and I guess that's a tiny thing, but then that sort of grows, doesn't it? And, everybody has their own take on how they're going to tell these stories.
We often talk about each and every panto should be different, whether it's an Aladdin in Glasgow or an Aladdin in Hackney or wherever. They should be different because the fundamental thing is the audience, and the audience is, and you've proved that more than anybody in Hackney.
Yeah, I guess that's it. You write for the audience that you have, and I think that's important because they have to have a sense of ownership. And let's face it, they're the last member of the cast. Yeah. I mean, they're the people that create the rhythm of the show, no matter how much you can get it tight as anything in the rehearsal room. Yeah. And then when you get out there, apart from the fact that you've got the set flying around, which will inevitably might take longer than you have in the rehearsal room, but also you've got the reactions from the audience, and you are playing with them every night, and they're different every night, whether that's 900 or 1,000, 5-year-olds to a mixed audience to a load of drunken adults on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I think, you are looking at writing for that audience, and that some of the best pantos I've seen are the Scottish ones. They're so extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Brutal.
and so Scottish and so brilliant and masterful. I was very lucky to see Stanley Baxter once.
Wow.
And I think it's extraordinary, and I think that again, there's no right or wrong way of doing a pantomime. It is about who you're writing for. I think, however, now there is more of a conscious effort to go, we're looking at young people, how they perceive other people, how they perceive themselves, and how they perceive the world that they live in. And I think that's important. So perhaps the morality might change within a story, quite easily these days.
There's an old adage that I was told hundreds of years ago about panto, and the script in particular. If a line isn't funny and it doesn't add anything to the story, what's it doing there?
Exactly. It's no point. And that's why you have
Because it can't be stodgy. And we talked about pace. Actually, pace is really important.
Pace and economy. And I think that's why, I have that adage of going, if you put something in, we have to find some way to take something out where possible, or make it shorter or whatever. And equally, I think, you do change the script during previews. You have to, because there are some things, it's not a finite science. You don't know. And you're sitting out there going, is that gag going to work? Is it not? Yeah, there are some surefire ones, but there's also ones that maybe an actor might struggle with. And you might think, oh, well, I'd get a laugh with it, quite arrogantly. And then try. I've had that happen to me, actually, when I've gone, well, I'm joking, with Clive, well, I'd get a laugh with it like this, and then have to go on for him, which I have many times, and then thought, right, I'm going to put that line back in, and I'm going to get a laugh. And of course, you put it back in, and it dies a death, and then you go, So I think, you have to be sensitive to that, to the audience, and sensitive to trying and pushing it. You might put an advert in that you've watched loads of times and you think it's funny and you do a reference to it, and people are like, what? Yeah. Or a particular thing. There was a hair remover thing called a no-no, which used to make me laugh. And of course, I put it in, and it never got a laugh any night. And I was thinking, why is that? And then a friend of mine was in, one friend, and she laughed all on her own. And I was like, I love you, Marcia. But I think, you're trying it, aren't you? You're trying something, and it isn't, as you say, an exact science, and it's quite scary at times.
Yeah, and the acid test is always once the audience is in. But one final question, which wasn't asked today, but how differently do you approach writing a script if you're directing it or if you're not directing it? Because particularly with stage directions, if you've written a slosh scene or something similar that you know how it works in your head, how do you make sure the director understands that?
Yeah, you write it. I think also you have some fun with that director, and you get them. You're being collaborative with them. The lead up to the first day of rehearsals, really, in terms of you want to have their back, and also you want to be able to get them on board with where your thought patterns are. And so I think, definitely. As I'm finding at the moment, I'm writing more stage directions than I normally would for Catford, for example, because I'm not directing it. Having said that, I've got the amazing Pete Rowe on it, so we think alike anyway. So it's sort of okay, and I'm very relaxed about it. I guess if it was someone I didn't know so well, then I'd probably be more pedantic about what I'm writing in the script.
Well, that's not the key thing about pantos, it's relationships, isn't it? The whole creative team, the relationship between the director and the cast and so on. It's all about relationships. It's one of the most collaborative art forms, I think, isn't it?
I think it is, and equal trust, mutual trust, and I think that's it. I rely heavily on my musical directors to help me, or the composers to help me move that story along. And I guess when I'm directing it, you're right, actually, I hadn't thought about it, but I probably do put less stage directions in. Unless it's a slop scene, then I might be really pedantic about it, because we might have to be designing around it. But even then, I always leave the ending, because then myself and the actors will find the ending. The payoff is going to happen out of the play, rather than me going, and now he gets this, No, actually, let's have a play with it. So I guess, that's that's more of the unknown quantity of the thing, is those sort of routines.
Listen, it's been great to see you again.
It's so lovely to see
and
you.
What a great event, and I'm
Really
sure the
nice.
Panto Association are going to do more of these. The one last year was really successful as well, so hopefully we'll see you again. And have a great Christmas with
Thank
2
you.
Pantos this year.
Yeah, Soho Walthamstow, brand new theatre, brand new version of Aladdin, and the Dick Whittington, which is the Windrush version, different version, cut down version from the last one I did at Hackney, at Catford, Broadway. Very lucky, very blessed, and very excited.
Thanks so much for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also with me is playwright and director Toby Hulse. Toby, what a fabulous day, a chance for people from all areas of the industry, from all over the country, to come together and talk about something that's so fundamental.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a really, really enjoyable afternoon. I've found with the other panellists, we share many things in common, but we also have different angles on things. I think if we'd been able to carry on talking, we'd have found more disagreement, which I think would have been quite interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I've just been talking to a member of the audience. She's keen on writing her first pantomime, and she's talking about how do you write jokes which are suitable for children and some for adults. And I'm very particular in my point of view, is you write a joke that's suitable for everyone, and you don't write smut. And maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, I don't know. I'm very conscious that I was sitting next to John, who writes adult pantomimes.
Yeah.
That would have been a great discussion to be able to have, but we've only got an afternoon, so.
But it all boils down to knowing your audience.
Yes.
And the audience that John wants is not the same audience necessarily that you want. Some of them may cross over, but yours is a family pantomime, and that is a key part of it. And if you don't want to upset anybody, it has to be a family show.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's also a matter of taste involved there. I grew up hating those moments where you'd be watching a programme on television and your adults would laugh and you wouldn't know why they were laughing. And then you'd ask about it and say, oh no, we can't tell. Those moments to me felt excluding and exclusive. And so I try really hard. It's very difficult. I'm writing Dick Whittington at the moment. It's actually quite hard to write Dick Whittington without smut in it. It sneaks out accidentally. And I think I've managed to do it, but I would hate any member of the audience to feel that they've been excluded, whether that's a child excluded because they don't understand an adult joke, or an adult excluded because they don't get a cultural reference that's for children, or to me, pantomime's this fantastic folk art form that's fully inclusive of anyone who chooses to come to see it.
Do you know, the wordplay as well is important, isn't it? And I mean, simple jokes and wordplay, if you take your 5-year-old children or grandchildren and see a panto, the words bum or bogey will actually have them in hysterics.
Yes.
And adults love that because they're enjoying having fun and watching their kids have fun.
Absolutely, and to be honest, I think the words are funny when I think you lose something as an adult. You gain respect a bit. You think you're not allowed to laugh at those. I think they are actually funny. And William Shakespeare managed it with Midsummer Night's Dream. He made the word bottom funny over and over again. So why not exploit that? There's also a joy in wordplay, which is even if you don't quite understand what's going on in terms of there's some kind of clever pun. There's something about that playfulness with language, which is the same as slapstick, which is playfulness with physicality, or ridiculous situations, the kind of the set routines again in pantos, which are playfulness with narrative and plot. There's something about the form which encourages play and allows play in the same way that Christmas allows you to wear a stupid hat or a silly jumper, or to eat sprouts when you don't like them, or whatever it might be. There's a license about Christmas which seeps into pantomime, and it's that license I love.
A couple of references to not be too precious about your script, because it is a collaborative process, and possibly one of the most collaborative processes when you look at all the various people from all sorts of backgrounds who come together on a panto. But I said to Susie McKenna, do you approach writing a script differently if you're not directing it yourself, especially for things like a slapstick or slosh routine, for instance, because you have the idea of how it works in your head? Does that mean you have to be heavier on the stage directions if you're not directing it?
So I've written 2 pantomimes for Chipping Norton, both of which John Terry has directed, and there are some bits where I can, because we know each other quite well, I can rely on him to kind of understand what my intention is in a piece of writing. Things like the slosh routines, actually we will sit down and, although it's not in the stage directions, we will storyboard those things and think about when he's rehearsing those sequences, if I can't be in the room, we'll have long discussions afterwards about the rhythm of things, or how many times it's funny to stick a bucket on someone's head, or whatever it might be. Just to sort of flip the question slightly, when I direct my own pantomimes, I will do a little speech at the start of rehearsals where I reference I trained as a teacher, and I did a PGC, so that's one year of training up, and the Vice-Chancellor of what was then called Bath College of Higher Education said to us, in a year we cannot train you to be a teacher, but we can train you how to learn to be a teacher. And I do a similar speech with pantomimes. I'll give them that anecdote and say, in 2 weeks I cannot rehearse you. The thing that goes on stage in preview will not be the finished product. But what I can is give you the procedures, the checkpoints, the things to look out for, so that you can teach yourselves how to finish the directing of this show. And I think that's, although the short rehearsal period is driven by economics, actually it's to the benefit of pantomime, because it gets bashed about and honed with an audience.
We talked about evolution, and it's really important that Panto does continue to evolve, particularly with social consciousness and so on in the 21st century particularly. But it's got to where it has because certain things work. How strict are you when you're writing a script with the traditions, if you like, things like baddie entering stage left, for instance, or the rule of three, that sort of thing?
I'm surprisingly strict, actually. If the convention has some sort of justification, and if I can't quite work out the justification for that thing, I'll look at the routine and ask, does it deserve to be in this pantomime, other than the audience expect it? An interesting example of that is the song sheet, which, as an audience member, I find excruciating. I really dislike it. I know why it's there in those big pantos where there's a walk down scene coming up. That serves a very practical function. But for me as a member of the audience, I don't like them. So I've been constantly looking at how can you do the song sheet differently. Is that in the version of Puss in Boots that we did at Chipping Norton, one of the characters was trying to write a love song. So during the course of the action was always asking the audience for rhyme words and stuff. So when we got to the denouement of the story, he sang a song that he had written with the audience. So the audience had written the song sheet. So it had served a narrative function as well as providing the walk down stuff. In the Dick Whittington that I'm writing this year, we've completely upended the design of things. So we no longer need those big scene changes. And so in fact we're putting the song sheet at the beginning of Act 2, where it will serve a very strong narrative function, which is the audience need to know a song, which will then take this. So we've kept the detail, but I've not been strict about where it happens. I'm not routine for routine's sake.
No, I think that's another way that it's evolving. Imagine Theatre are now using digital sets, for instance, which mean those conventions of big scene, front cloth, front cloth, they're not necessary anymore. And the whole show moves much more smoothly. It's much more economical. The pace is much better and so on. So the conventions are still there, but you don't need all the elements of a panto to make it work. You can miss them out one year and put them back in the next.
And audiences have got, people who go to the theatre in this country, on the whole, go to pantomimes and they go to musicals. And musicals, similarly, have become more open in their design. If you look at Anne Juliet, for instance, it's a really fluid design world that's going on there. And we learn a lot from watching Anne Juliet and go, actually, we don't need to have that. Bring a cloth in so we can change the scene. Just change the scene while the audience are watching, but make it part of a choreography, make it part of the song. So actually our audience have become more theatre literate, and I think they're more theatre literate than we allow them normally. So let's use that to our advantage and make it means we can go to places that we didn't do normally, and we don't get held up with these long scene changes. We can do something more exciting.
And even those audience members who aren't necessarily theatrically literate and haven't seen shows like Anne Juliet, if you do a good job with it and it's the first experience, they'll carry on with you. And it becomes part of this. Like in last year's Sleeping Beauty wakes up in 1985 and decides to open a fashion boutique. So she transforms a very boring shopping centre into her fashion boutique. So during the course of singing, sisters are doing it for themselves. The whole stage was transformed, and again the
The scene change was part of the story. Right. We'd used it to compress 6 months worth of time into a single song and do a scene change all at the same time. And that's what you learn from musicals. And actually, you don't need to have seen Anne Juliet to know what's going on there.
So what about this year? What pantos have you got?
So this year it's Dick Whittington at Oxford Playhouse. Mm-hmm. We've gone for a 1990s revival theme. I imagine we're not the only pantomime. And so the basic outline is Liam Rattiger has got back together with his brother Noel Rattiger, and they are going to take over the world and make it very, very boring, as we all know. This is the logical leap that all pantomimes have to make at some point. As we all know, rats like the world to be bland and uniform. Yeah. So they're slowly removing anything of interest. This is actually deep down as a personal statement. I think the 80s were very exciting and the 90s. Yeah. And now you look at teenagers and they're all wearing identical tracksuits and socks and sliders and looking at their phones. So deep down it's a story about uniformity and conformity and a celebration of what we do against that. And Dick Whittington represents the force of difference and uniqueness. Dick Whittington comes from Oxford. The rats live in London where everything is boring and bland.
What a fantastic idea. Yeah. All the very best. Thanks for talking to us, Toby, and have a great Christmas.
And you. Thank you.
Well, the interesting thing about panellist Vicky Stone is that all of the writers here write panto scripts as you do. Some of them direct as well, but you write much more than that. Plays, lyrics, music as well. So you're a walking creative team on your own. How different is your approach to some of the other people here today?
Writing is my job in any form, whether I'm writing music. I pretty much 5 days a week sit down at my desk and I already pre-decide what project I'm going to write on a particular day. Mm-hmm. And I just write a really disciplined amount. And I know, I as I said in the talk, that I know what my page count should be per day. I really know that if I know what I'm writing about and I'm not researching it, and I've done the treatment and I've done the kind of, which means I've kind of worked out what the story is, and so I know it, I can just do between 9 and 13 pages a day, and I sit down and do that like it's my job, because it is, and regardless of what I'm working on. Obviously, if it's music, it's a bit different. If I'm writing songs, then that has a bit of a difference. That can take a song can take anything between 2 days and a week, depending on what.
But some of the writers here will write a script and maybe leave gaps in where they think a song might go, and then they might leave it to an MD, or they might just lift current pop songs and change the lyrics and so on. But you got your head around all of that. Yeah, it was one of my favourite parts of the process is that once I know the title and I've done the treatment for the story, I then will decide on the music. And I decide on the music a lot by either walking or running. I listen to playlists. I set Spotify up so that it plays me music I've never heard before. I would never put music in a panto that I've never heard before, because that kind of would tend to mean that it's not famous enough. But it does give you a sense of what is new and what's popular. And so then I'm always looking for a song lyrically that fits our story. I don't really want to crowbar in a song. I mean, I've crowbarred two into this year's Beauty and the Beast at New Orleans in Ipswich, but I hope I've done it in a really, really funny way, because there's a couple of really big hitters that you couldn't get into a story at all. I'll just say what they are. You've got the Bruno Mars, the pata. I mean, what is that? I've just had to make something up that stands for APT in the panto, and then the other one is Pink Pony Club. I mean, what have you got to sing that about? So but they were there for me. They're such big hits that I wanted to put them in, and I had to make the crowbarring in of them funny. Yeah. But every other song serves the story lyrically, so that it moves it along. I like that thing in musical theatre. The thing that makes musicals great is when the protagonist or whoever is singing can tell the rest of the story in song. You've got to be flexible, though. Topicality is key. When you're writing a script, obviously, something might happen in October, November that you think that's got to go in. Likewise with music. the years, for instance, when every panto in the country had Crazy Frog or Baby Shark, that sort of thing?
Yes. I have a feeling this year it might be Lava Chicken. I've resisted it. I've looked at it and I'm well aware of Lava Chicken, and I've decided not to put it in. But I think you have got to be flexible. Also, what's great about panto is that you don't have to have a song in full. So you could take a really little bit of something and just do it for a moment and then never mention it again. But I think you have got to be flexible. I also did a show. It was a show that I wrote for the Lyric Hammersmith. It was our production of Aladdin. We were in the third week of rehearsals, doing the final rehearsal run, and I pulled all the other creatives together and I said, we've got the opening of Act 2 wrong. I'm really sorry, it's the wrong song. This is painful, but we need to do open heart surgery now. And that involved new costumes. So the costumes were designed around the song. The song just wasn't working and it wasn't as famous enough as I thought it was. It was that year that it was the year that there was no Eurovision because of the pandemic or something. And it was the Icelandic guys that done that song with their pictures on their faces, Think About Things, Believe It, that one. I thought that was going to be a massive, massive hit. By the time it got to, and it was in the summer, it was huge, but actually it just didn't, like, you've got to pick that song that still hangs around, and it didn't hang around enough, and I was watching it going, nope, this is not it. And then so we changed it to Good As Hell, Lizzo, and that involved gold costumes, like I'm Feeling Good. Like it was a completely different, it wasn't just changing a song, it was a completely different story beat that went along with the song, and it took a lot of bravery to do that at the end of third week of rehearsals, about to go into tech, and we just came in on the Saturday and we just did it, and it was the right thing to do. It was wobbly for the first preview, but it became great by press night, and it was the right thing to do.
You've done comedy as well. You've got the whole package really for panto, and you've got your head around all of the elements, but the key for me, I think, always has to be the narrative, driving the story on, the story driven characters doing that gives the other characters, the comedy characters, the baddie, a bit of space to interact with the audience and do that sort of stuff. But it has to be economical, it has to have pace, and it has to be true to the story, doesn't it?
One of the things I really try and do very well every time is running time. I think running time is hugely important. I think if panto outstays its welcome in terms of how long of an evening is, I think there's a bit of alchemy in terms of how long it should be. Too short and people feel shortchanged. Too long and you kind of spoil the fun really. Yeah. For me, I think this real sweet spot is 2 hours 15 including interval. So you've made maybe that could nudge into 2:20, but that is the absolute maximum I think your panto running time should be. So in terms of the amount of elements, I always think panto is also a bit like a buffet. There are lots of bits and lots of set pieces and lots of things you could do. It's unwise to put everything from a buffet on your plate. What you really want to try and do with the panto is create a balanced plate. So it's like, look, if you've not got room for a slop scene and a ghost gag, and it's like you have to drop something, And I think panto is like that. It's like you shouldn't try and put all those in. You should try and do a number of those set pieces and those routines well, so that your story can flow, because also you don't want to keep stopping the story all the time as well to go and do a bit. So it's a real balancing act between those kind of different choices that we can make as panto writers.
I wonder, I've discussed this with a few people in the past, whether you think times have changed. We talk about kids with screen time, for instance, and their mobile phones and so on. And generally, that shared experience is diminishing now. Generally, families don't very often sit down to eat a meal together, let alone watch the telly or go to the theatre, but they do go to pantomime together. So it's really important that we keep that going. But do you think attention span is getting smaller and smaller? Is that one of the reasons why the shows have to be tight?
In some ways, yes, attention spans have got shorter, and that's because of short form videos. But what those short form videos mean is that you have to keep people engaged. So I don't think it's attention spans. It's just that people's tolerance for something that they're not enjoying, they can swipe on. So what we have to do as writers is make sure that they are enjoying themselves, which means we have to work harder. And I think that you can keep people's attention. I kind of firmly believe that I think there's going to be a bit of a pushback. So I think that people are going to want to come together more as we go. So things like AI, ChatGPT, I think the more that we go down that route of things that aren't, like particularly like videos that are created not made by humans. And I think the more that infiltrates our short form videos, I think we're going to start to really reject it and want to come together again and watch things live so that we do experience it. I love the fact about the communion that you get in a theatre is that there's been some research, particularly with musicals, is that people's heart rate and breathing tends to unify when they're watching shows. And there's something about that and that experience that you cannot get on a screen. And I think that we as theatre makers have to hold on to that and make sure that their experiences are really special when they come so that they want to come back.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that became very clear during the pandemic when theatres were closed and various companies decided that they wanted to still engage with their audience, so they did digital pantomimes that you could download or watch on YouTube and so on. And then it became evident that it just wasn't the same, not just because there was no live audience on the recording, but also you're not sharing the experience with it. We're social animals, aren't we?
Yes. What I do like about the digital, so the New Wolsey in Ipswich, one of the theatres I write for, they actually started offering a digital product during the pandemic and have continued it because they had such a good response from people that actually maybe may not be able to leave the home, maybe older people, and you don't buy you don't just get the link at any time. You have to watch it at 7 if you're not there when the show. So they're selling something that has got a lot of experiential elements of the theatre. It's not just press play and you can't pause it. If you don't watch it there and then, your ticket is wasted. I like the accessibility element of the sort of learning about what a digital panto can be, but it's in addition to.
Yeah, is that one of the performances of the run with an audience in? That
yes.
Well, that's why it works, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's about 4 performances of the run, and you have to sit down and watch it at that time. And you can't live stream it at your leisure. And I think that's kind of important too, because I know that then families will sit together, or if somebody isn't able to leave the house, and all those sorts of things. Panto as an experience should always feel very welcoming, easy, safe, fun, all of those things to make people want to keep returning.
I mean, the saying is theatre is for everybody, but panto is definitely and should be, and that's why it needs to evolve. It has to be totally inclusive, and it has to be a show that anybody from any background, any ethnicity, whatever their age, can enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I particularly love about panto is lots of my writing friends that don't write panto. Sometimes writing panto or being involved in panto there's a lot of snobbery in the theatre industry around it. I believe that there should be a pantomime category at the Olivier's, for example. I think that as a what it offers to the sector financially, how it props up the sector and props up the buildings, in which other shows that are seen as more highbrow, I think people can often dismiss it. And a lot of my peers who get commissioned to write plays and things, lots of venues that commission things that they have no performance dates for, and actually you get your commission, you write your first draft, you may not then be asked to write a second draft, so you might not even get your second payment. There was an article that went out on the Royal Court website that said if we paid every writer's final submission fee, it would bankrupt us, because they commission loads of writers but don't actually put on all the shows. And it makes me feel like, don't be snobs towards me and panto, because my show's getting on every year. I'm writing something that's happening. I'm writing something where if I don't get it in on time, the train is still leaving the station. We have a really important job, because we're not only making a piece of comedy that, as I said in the talk, that reflects the year, it reflects the time, it's telling a traditional story. We've got to do all these things simultaneously. We have to do them quickly and efficiently. You may be starting the writing process at the beginning of the year, and you've got to every few months a new draft is going in and you're getting notes. I am working on a musical that's going into rehearsals in April 26, and I will have at that point been working on that script for nearly 2 years. Whereas in the panto world, you have to make something that has the production values of a musical, but really the whole process is about 9 months long. So it's less than half of a show of similar scale, and people think that, and I feel like other areas of the industry still look down on us, and it's like, no, we're doing what you're doing but twice as quickly.
It's a great way to have finished, Vicky. It really is. Thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming.
And sadly, that's it for now, I'm afraid. Congratulations once again to Sam Munday-Webb and the UK Pantomime Association team for what was a well-received, informative and entertaining afternoon here in Oxford. Go to the website at pantomimeassociation.co.uk to find the debate in full and for any information you might want in the future for any more of these panel events. Meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe to this series on your favourite podcast platform and make sure you join me, Martin Ballard, next time for episode 116 when we'll be discussing the role of the pantomime baddie with two of the very best in the business, Davina De Campo and Andy Hockley.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.